Welcome back, teachers, students, and history enthusiasts. You are trapped in history with me, your host, Robbie Malcolmson. And today, we're diving into an annual competition and project that I started 11 years ago. I apologize for the month and a half break, but I do appreciate the continual support from the audience. This is episode 43, and as I said earlier, we're going to explore the purpose of this project that I use in class called the Country Competition, which is a project-based learning strategy and a role-playing competition that I have done in class for the past 11 years. Now, first I'm going to start off a small segment just explaining why I've been gone a month and a half. So about a month and a half ago, I got pretty sick right before we went on winter break at school. And I ended up getting a sinus infection and kind of fought over through that for about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks of dealing with that. I noticed that the older I get, the harder it is to fight off some of these illnesses. Also, I haven't talked about it much before, but my wife and I had our newborn daughter in the summer, and then we've been going throughout this year on mostly one income. My wife does make a supplemental income as well. The last 2 months or so, we've been really struggling as far as being able to afford our older house while trying to move. We did finally sell it though. So as of about a week and a half ago, we finally closed on selling our old house, and we were able to get back a lot of much needed money to help us get back a savings again and get back on our feet. So between some health and economic concerns, I took a little bit of a break off. I felt like it was good for me mentally to be able to do that. But now I feel like I really want to dive right back into what we were doing before and continue with some of the guests that I'm planning on doing, some of the topics we plan on doing. And it's not something where I'm going to only be doing things that teachers teach in class, but I want to explore all topics in history. So I'd like this to be just a history podcast in general. Before we start, please don't forget that if you really like the podcast, we are on TikTok and we are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We're on Substack. We're on Twitter as well. I've been trying to put a lot of effort in posting interesting sources, interesting topics for you all to kind of follow down and maybe even go down a little bit of a rabbit hole like I would usually do. But tonight's episode is going to be kind of an explanation. Pretty soon, I will do a few parts in which I will show this visually. I'll use StreamYard to share my screen so you can actually see how the game looks whenever you're playing it. So about 10 years ago, whenever I've been teaching for about 5 up to that point, and I started to think of new ways to where we can do more of a role-playing style in class. One of those older methods in the early 2000s about making your classes more engaged was something called History Alive. And I started to try to combine something like that and the idea of this thing called a PBL, a project-based learning thing. And I've always been a fan of computer games like RTS strategy games of like Command and Conquer and Age of Empires and all that kind of thing. And I thought, man, how great would it be if we could do something like that, to have class almost like an RPG style, a role playing kind of style way of doing class, at least for a certain amount of time. It doesn't have to be the whole year. And that's really what got started conjuring up this idea of this country competition. I would like to name it something better, something kind of empires or something like that. But considering I teach world history classes or AP European history classes, and I used to teach U.S. history as well, I think this activity is great for bringing in competition, but hopefully in a healthier way. And some of you may disagree with me on that as far as using competition between students and between classes, and see that could be an issue, and possibly it would be. And that's something that it's one of the reasons why I'm bringing this competition up, because I want the listeners to hear my ideas of it in general, give me feedback on what I could do to make this better, make it more improved for the students, most importantly. So, first of all, the purpose of the country competition is to allow students to role play almost in a way diplomacy. And some teachers have used an old game called diplomacy before, but imagine that you have the entire world map interactively, and you have each class of yours or each groups in a class of yours represent their own government and their own empire, their own country of sorts. And you don't have to do an empire if you don't want to. And basically from that point on, the rest of the school year or the rest of the 9 weeks or the rest of the semester, however long you play it, they would be building up their resources in these places and their money in these places, their technology, and they expand their their countries, their empires into other territories. And as they're doing that, they're learning more of the real earth, the real territories of the earth. And as they get more spread across the world, they have to consider to negotiate. They have to sign treaties with other classes and work out trade deals and potentially pay taxes. So I'm trying to bring an element into the game that also encourages financial literacy as well. Because as we know in high school, not every student comes out of high school with an excellent grasp on financial literacy. So one of the things that inspired me was the third 9 weeks of school always seemed the longest. It was like the winter stretch. It was didn't have as many breaks, unless of course the weather was bad. So I thought, what could I do to bring in a class to kind of help class not be as mundane or as repetitive, and maybe add an element to where the students could be even more involved and encouraged to participate even more. And it's all part of this kind of intangible competition between each other. And I used to do this over like PowerPoint slides, and the kids would have access to that on Google Classroom. But now I've moved it over to Google Earth. So the purpose of this is to basically allow students to role play managing governments, expanding governments, figuring out how to work through topics peacefully, potentially having to use force and having to use war as a way to settle certain disputes. But basically, it teaches them more problem solving and future problem solving. And I wanted to shape the game into this. And what I do is I will start this game a week after Thanksgiving break, and then I will go all the way to spring break. So it's really the last couple of weeks of the second 9 weeks, and then the entire third 9 week period, because it takes some time to really build up countries and empires in the game and to see how classes negotiate with each other. Now remember, I will have visuals in this in the future. In the next coming weeks, I'll do some smaller episodes where I'll share a screen and you can see exactly what these things physically look like. Tonight is more of the rationale over what this project looks like, and maybe you can come in to those future episodes with an image in your head of what you think that could look like. Now, I also want to foreshadow the programs that I use for the game. So I do use Google Earth now. I think Google Earth is excellent because it's interactive. You can zoom way in, you can zoom way out and spin around the world. I like how it shows the boundaries. They have a new mode where you can kind of do the Google Map looking view so you don't have the physical features. And it's a little easier to see the political boundaries. But I've also liked the customization ability with Google Earth. You can put your own waypoints in certain areas. You can draw lines in certain areas. So in a way, I thought, if done correctly, Google Earth could be used like a board game. And that's basically what me and my teachers days did a couple of years ago. We set out to spend a few months researching and trying to put resources in particular territories and trying to do every territory we could in the earth. And we would break certain countries down by regions or provinces or states. And I want you to picture this. Picture a game that you use Google Earth for it. You use Google Sheets to manage the financial part of it, but kind of envision combining Monopoly, Risk, and Settlers of Catan all together. And I like the resource aspect of Settlers of Catan. And if you're better at like PC gaming or video games where you have an RTS kind of strategy where you're managing a civilization, you're managing a settlement or a military, it's kind of like that. So I use Google Earth mainly for the interactive part. And every territory will have a waypoint that is set to gold or yellow. And students can go around the world and explore, click on those, and then it'll show them a list of all the types of resources that may be in that territory. Some of those resources include timber, fresh water, oil, agricultural goods, industrial goods, iron ore, natural gas, just items like this. There's usually about 9 core items. And then there's usually some special items like plutonium, uranium, copper, aluminum. So there's a little bit of a crafting element for the students as well. We also decide to kind of hide gold and silver in certain territories as well. So if those territories are annexed or they're conquered later on, then students could get, $50,000 for their empire's bank account or $25,000 for their bank account. And that's something that I'll show later on in the future of that. We will also use Google Docs as a way to keep track of all the students that are the leaders in each group. So I used to do it to where my classes of 20 or 30 might be broke up into 3 countries in that class, adding up to a total of about 18 different countries or empires by the time I taught all 6 of my classes. Now I do this method where every class is a country of its own. Everybody in the class is part of the government. They may have a president, a prime minister, a dictator, a monarchy that's whether absolute or constitutional monarchy. They could even do a theocracy as their government. So we'll take a day to kind of go over those different styles of government and how you manage those. But usually the information as far as directions go, what resources mean, who the leaders of the other classes are that kids can have access to, are all done on Google Docs. One of my favorite elements that's very important to keep up with the mathematical part of the project is using Google Sheets or Excel, something like that. So we have a single spreadsheet that will show literally all the classes that me and my team teacher have and what their empire names are, how many territories or colonies that they own or countries that they own or have annexed. We have their national banking system that keeps track of all their money. We have all their resources. And like I said, these resources include the ones that I listed above earlier. And they have those special resources they can use as well as skills that they can earn. And I also keep track of several other things like a factory system, a mine system, ports. We brought that in a couple of years ago about having different ports around the world. I think we have 18 of them. So when students are able to make it to those ports, then they can travel around the world and be able to upgrade certain things as they're going. We also have a World Bank in which I take tax money from them. So in the past, the more countries that they would get, the more property tax I would put on them, and they could understand how taxes work. They give money to me every week for taxes. I put it in a bank account. After the first month of the game, I started allowing them to take out loans, and then I put interest rate on those loans to help teach them how to manage all that. We also have a resource database of over 400 territories in the world that have a master list of all the resources that they're in. And again, this will get a lot easier to understand once the my visual episodes will be in there. So I'll do a short episode where I just go over the visual of the map, and I'll also do another episode where I will go over the spreadsheet and any of the other docs that are going on. So it may be a 2 or 3 part sort of series because it could be like drinking water out of a fire hose to kind of hear me go through all of the items that are on there. But ultimately, that's the goal here. The goal is to be able to create a fun and engaging and role playing experience for history students in class to be engaged, to work together, to negotiate together, but if need be, to be able to use force with their countries, with their military. Because I do try to make it somewhat realistic. And what I don't do, and I've been criticized on in the past, is I don't encourage the students to be warmongers or to be imperialistic against each other. That's not the point of the game. Is to teach them in life it's okay to imperialize other places. It's just for the concept of the game. Is that it helps them explore the world, and as they're having fun playing the game, they're learning geography. They're learning the physical elements of the map around them. They're learning how to read a map properly. They're learning how to deal with scarce resources or scarcity in general, and they have to be able to negotiate diplomacy with other classes. I have templates for treaties, different kinds of treaties as well that I can share with each of you going forward, and I'm very excited about being able to do that. So, just so you know, before I wrap this up, in the future I will have small episodes showing you the visual Google Earth if you're interested, the Google Sheets and how to manage the finances of it, and then all of the Google Docs that go with it too, including the first day or two lesson. Because I have it structured where here's the first day or two of class, whether you have a skinny or a block length class that you could do this with, and how do you implement it in step by step with your class. And then after that, it's really just managing it. The students don't behave any differently than what they would normally do, but every question that they answer in class that is correct, it's worth this intangible fictional money that goes in their bank account. When they get A's and B's on tests, they get that much money, or do assignments on time and put really good effort in. When we do Socratic seminar discussions, the more that they are meaningfully involved, the more they get into. So basically, the game rewards their effort. And they're already giving good effort, but I'd say the effort increases even more when we're doing this kind of an intangible game. And basically, as the year goes, you see the world change and it develops. And you can use AI to kind of create like lore or like a storyline behind these things. And the classes can go to war with each other over content by using quizzes and then using the class averages to determine whether or not this class wins the war. They don't win the war. You can also use AI to do that. You can also use the wheel, which you have those free websites that you can use like a spin wheel, like on Wheel of Fortune, to help determine certain things. So it has like a lot of layered elements. And one of the elements I'm bringing in that's going to be new this year is an XP system. So classes will be able to legitimately gain XP for their involvement each day in class. And as they level up, they will unlock new skills and new rewards. It's just another little layer or element to make the game, yes, more complicated, but also having a deeper experience and also providing more ways of being rewarded into the game. And hopefully the longevity of the game stays strong. So I wanted this episode to be a little shorter tonight because it's been a while. My voice is a little bit more tired. It's been a while since I've done an episode. And but I do want you all to know that I do plan on having guests come on again, and I plan on having lots of visual episodes as well, breaking down movies with Eric Harris and others on that. But I want to wrap this episode up as far as the topic of the country competition, because I just wanted to introduce this project that I did. It started so small 11 years ago and now has developed into a pretty complex system. And this is a game that I would like to potentially offer to other teachers or sell online, things like that. But by finally bringing this up, I can actually expose myself, yes, to criticism, of course, justifiably, but also maybe many of you could have some ideas that you could email me or comment and share with me on how do you think I can make this game better or more meaningful, more school appropriate, or even more competitive, things like that as we're going. So as usual, let's finish up this episode with a few philosophical questions with reflections that I think can kind of go well whenever you're a teacher and you're considering doing a competition like this. Question number 1. Can we truly understand history without stepping into someone else's shoes? This is something that I think many of us deal with, and we're trying to implement in our classes as much as possible with using sources or role-playing activities. And part of what I want students to understand with the country competition is, how do countries manage conflict together? How do countries manage scarcity together? And on the small scale that our classes are, maybe they can get something from that whenever they're going. Question number 2 that you can do with your classes, you can do with other colleagues, or debate back and forth with me would be, should education prioritize knowledge or experience? And maybe that's obviously a combination of both, but I think if you had to determine which one it is, it would be an interesting discussion to see what many of you would say. The last question of the night, in teaching history, is it better to emphasize the inevitability of conflict or the potential of cooperation? It's something that in the country competition you can easily argue and encourage either side. You can encourage classes to be like warmongers, to be aggressive around the world, to be able to win this sort of kind of competition. But there are other ways that classes can win. They don't have to win by grabbing the most countries or annexing the most countries, but they can also win by having the most money in their bank account, having the most resources, being the highest level XP system on there too. There's lots of different ways that you could reward them, and you can even reward them for being diplomatic. So to finish up this episode, as usual, that is it for today. Thank you for joining me on this. And if you enjoyed this episode, do not forget to subscribe and share with others who love history. Until next time, keep questioning the past to understand the present. And as always, be contagious.